Hello, there's an article in the news headlines the last 2 or 3 days that I would like to go over just a little bit. It's about the demon possession that has been in the headlines, so let's get started. Okay, this is from the Daily Mail. It's been on Fox News and other news outlets, but it's titled, "We Almost Lost Our Lives. Woman Possessed by Demons in Portal to Hell House That Terrified Even the Police Chief Reveals New Details of Her Family's Terrifying Ordeal." And you can go to the Daily Mail and read the whole article if you like. They have an exclusive interview with her. This is in Gary, Indiana, and they say it really baffled the police. Let's scroll down just a little bit. A woman whose horrific experience living in an Indiana home that she and even city police are convinced was a haunted portal to hell has spoken on her paranormal trauma and what it was like to be a family possessed. I just want to go over this just a second. There are many references in the Bible to these portals and these demonic entities. It starts out in Genesis with the mention of the men of renown, the angels, the giants that took wives into themselves. I'm not an expert on this by any means. There are those who are, like Steve Quayle and some of those guys, L.A. Marzulli. They have done a lot of research, and they are finding that these portals do indeed exist still today. And I really don't know why people don't believe that they do. Given the history in the Bible and even in the New Testament of demons, I don't know why people just believe that stopped and is not here again. We'll go over some of that here in a minute, but let's take a look at the article. She says, "Me and my mother and my children almost lost our lives." Here's a picture of her, and here's a picture of the house, and you can see clearly that there is something there in the window. It says it's a ghastly figure. It's made more believable by her own earnest recounting, and also the Gary, Indiana police chief's chilling account of the haunting. I know it was infested with demons. I know that for a fact, she said. "I spoke to a good friend of mine who is clairvoyant. He's in New York. He explained to me what was going on in the house." This is the one that really caught my attention. Her friend said that the house was infested with demons and to get her children out. And a particularly scary bout with the demons had the family rushing to the emergency room as the 9-year-old son was in grips of possession. When the family got to the hospital, her son walked up the wall and did a backwards flip and threw her into the wall and started headbutting her. The doctor from the psych ward said, "That's not real, that's not human, no human can do what that little boy just did." Here we see a picture of them in the basement. That's where they thought that maybe the portal was coming from. And there's also a video with this that you can watch if you go visit. The family consulted a priest, and he told them to make an altar in the basement and surround it in salt. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, that was to banish the evil spirits, but that it didn't really end there. Let's scroll down just a little bit more, and here's another video of a voice that they say that you couldn't really hear. It was a demonic rasp issuing a welcome or a challenge as they stood unwittingly on the lip of a portal to hell. Okay, we'll listen to this just for a second and see what it says. It says this is an extract of a recording by Gary police in the basement of LaToya Ammon's former home, and this is a Daily Mail exclusive.
Well, let's see if we got anything. Yeah, I don't.
I'm going to ask.
Yeah. Huh. But they said, they would hear stuff in the basement.
Wait a minute, hold on. Somebody was on the counter back there, too. Look.
Oh, wow.
see somebody was running towns back there too.
Oh, they're burning stuff all over the place here.
That's where.
I'm surprised the fire department hasn't been here. I'm surprised the fire department hasn't been here.
Okay, I didn't catch that too good, but they think that that's evidence of a portal, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it a bit. As I said, we'll go into some of the portals that are in the Bible. Certainly few involved in the case wanted to when it began in early spring. But today, the veteran police officers experienced, physicians, paramedics, nurses, social workers, and clergy linked to the case speak of being attacked by demons, profoundly shaken and left with little choice but to believe that something possessed the 32-year-old mother of 3 and the rented home in which she, her children, and her mother lived from November 2011 until May 2012. She starts to describe some of the things that they went through. Standing in the kitchen, she claimed she heard dogs barking. It sounded like there were dogs in there and the family had no pets. As they were investigating it, she saw a shadow of somebody moving. Downstairs in the basement, which is the place where they found most of the disturbances, Rosa recalled an occasion on which she was down there alone doing some cleaning. She started coughing and choking so bad she was praying the whole time, and she says they didn't like for them to pray. They don't like that at all. Something down there was choking me to death, she said. On another occasion, her daughter and godson were in the basement, and he felt like something was stabbing him in the stomach. The more he read the Bible, the more it was stabbing and punching, and then they saw something flying across the room and land. Rosa reached for the object she claimed had been flung by some demonic force. It was a small Holy Family ornament. It was an ornament of the Nativity, actually. Two of the incidents were the most disturbing physical manifestations that was witnessed by several medics and law enforcement officials. Her daughter saw a scary black monster, but Rosa says during a visit to a family physician, both focused on the youngest child, then 7. She recalled she saw it trying to come out of him. It was trying to break loose in front of the doctor. His head was turning, his eyes rolled back, his mouth went crazy. He started talking in tongues. Then it threw her grandson completely across the room. The nurse who witnessed this would not go back into the room, while the doctor, realizing it was beyond his capabilities, called police and paramedics to take the child and his brother, both of whom fell unconscious, to Gary ER. That's when they saw the growling and the churning and walking back towards a wall that he glided up. That's when they witnessed that. This is the most detailed report I've seen in quite a while, and witnessed by so many professionals that it's hard to say. Anyway, the professionals have agreed that, it's not really a mental illness. This is manifestations that they can't explain. And let's scroll down just a little bit. He says they went into the basement and they dug a little bit and they found some items that were very strange. They weren't sure if they had been buried there before to call out demons, or if it was just, normal. But they found a sock with the ankles cut out. They found a plastic shoehorn that was cut in half, and the lid to a red kettle. Just things like that they really don't understand. The captain of the police department said, the sergeant told me that the children had been missing school and there was talk of satanic goings-on. He was very leery of it. He contacted some people and they decided to take a look. He walked in there thinking this was nothing but a hoax, a concocted story. Instead, what he experienced that day in the spring of 2012 shook him to his core, threatened his life, and became part of the documented history of one of the most disturbing and baffling cases in Indiana's police history. Captain Austin's assertions were echoed by Roman Catholic priest Father Michael Maginot, also interviewed by the Mayo. The priest said that it may be a more natural candidate to believe in supernatural phenomenon than a cop of 37 years standing who prides himself in being an aggressive and assertive law enforcer. So these aren't, your typical people who get spooked easy. But like Captain Austin, the priest set out to disprove the story. Instead, he would conduct 1 minor and 3 major exorcisms on the mother of 3, and he told the Mail Online that he himself had been the target of a demonic attack. So the skeptics, they went in to disprove it, but instead they found out exactly what was there. There was one person from, I guess it was like the Department of Human Services, that walked into the house, and they saw the blinds and parts of the walls dripping with this oil that they couldn't explain. And one of them touched it, and immediately her finger turned white like it was frozen or like a blister from a burn. And here's a picture of her hand. You can see it's this finger here. It turned white like possibly a bug bite or like it had been burned or frozen. Anyway, she refused to go back into the house. She wouldn't do it. And it was a DCS worker. And you can see this is where they show the ooze had been coming from. This is the ornament that went flying across the room when they were talking about it earlier. They all said the same thing. The further into the house they investigated, the less comfortable they felt. Things just seemed odd. The priest goes on to tell about the exorcisms that he performed, and at one point the mother had visited him, and before she left, he thought that maybe he had helped her and the demons were gone, and he gave her a rosary, and before she made it to the door, the rosary was torn into pieces, and he knew that he wasn't quite finished. Returning home in his Infiniti SUV, he said the electric door to his garage would not open. It had been fine before. He exited the vehicle and went to flip the main power, but that didn't work. When he went back to his car, the driver's seat was moving backwards and forwards by itself. This priest also, when he was performing an exorcism on the mother, said he couldn't get to the demons until they researched and found the names, and he won't give the names because he's afraid it will call them up. So this is very important. You can't attack these demons by yourself, and you don't know really what you're dealing with if you dabble in the occult. When I did a search for demons as I was looking at this article, there were all kinds of things came up. There was people asking questions. How can I open a demonic portal? And even the secular site that was answering this question said, I don't think you realize what you would be doing if you did that. So this is just very strange. And here they're talking about the men that dug the 5 foot down into the dirt of the basement and unearthed a bizarre collection of objects, a fake fingernail, a heavy corroded iron weight, and different things like that. Was it household trash, or was it objects ritualistically buried? They don't know. But anyway, by then, even the most level-headed present were open to the latter explanation, and several of the people who had visited the house on the first inspection, including the original CPS caseworker, had become so shaken by the day and its aftermath that they refused to go back. Department of Child Services family case manager that visited the house in May, when officers recorded the scene and Campbell's accounts of many strange and disturbing events, said the same thing. Very strange indeed. There's more pictures of the basement where they think that most of the activity was at. Ghostly things are easier to deal with, said Father Maginot, explaining a lot of the time, as Catholics, you can have a mass, pray for them, tell them to go into the light, not to be afraid, but demons are different. You're inviting in guests from other realms, and they don't necessarily want to leave. And that is very true. I find it odd that most of these games that the children are playing today, deal with the demonic and the opening the portals and using curses and spells to control these demons to wreak havoc. That's in the Bible also. You can go back as far as Solomon and see that there are tales and stories that God allowed him to use demons to do his work. So, there are a lot of stories like that. Just be very careful, because what a better way for Satan to open more portals at the times that we're living in now than to confuse and entice everyone into thinking that it's just a harmless little game we're playing. Look at the entertainment that's going on. Look at the Grammys, where there was a satanic song, and Katy Perry, this all ties in together. What better way for Satan to allow people to help with portals opening up than to entice people to believe that it's harmless? And this is the type of stuff with this article that happens when you do that. Here's a little bit from the priest explaining that things happened to him as he was trying to help this family. He was out riding his bike, and a series of near accidents and unsettling moments climaxed with him being seemingly spontaneously thrown from the saddle of his bike into the grass. He looked and he saw that the seat of his bike was completely twisted, but it made no sense because it was absolutely tight, and he had to really pound it to straighten it out. He had no doubt in his mind that he was being warned. The second time he performed an exorcism, he saw a more violent response. He said, you try to protect yourself as much as you can. You go to confession, because if there are any unconfessed sins, it will use that. I'm not a Catholic, and I'm not, suggesting that this is what we should follow, but this is absolutely true. There was an incident in the New Testament where Jesus cast out a demon from a boy that was, when they brought him to Jesus, he fell on the ground, foaming at the mouth and writhing, and he cast the demon out of him, and the disciples evidently had tried to do that before, and they asked Jesus, why didn't it work when we did that? And Jesus said, this type of demon must be cast out with much fasting and prayer. So it even tells us in the Bible that you don't approach these beings unless your spirit is in tune with God and the Holy Spirit. So anyway, he explains what happened. He said, you will think you're torturing the person, but you're not. You're torturing the demon. And I don't recommend anyone, unless they're right with God, to do this. But anyway, the final exorcism was in Latin, praising God and condemning the demon. The parts that were praising God, there was no reaction from her. The parts that were condemning the demon, he said she convulsed, which was interesting to the priest, as LaToya did not know Latin. So she felt herself being pulled up as if to levitate, but the priest saw no sign of that. So that she's describing the internal struggle that was going on in her as the priest was commanding the demon to leave. After the final exorcism, the priest visited the house again and blessed it with a more serious blessing that involved incense and holy water and salt. There were new tenants there by then, but he told the owner that if he didn't deal with that properly, it wouldn't go away. But he thinks that he finally sealed the portal, and it's better. It would be interesting to know if they're seeing anything more here. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here in just 1 second about the demonic portals that are in the Bible. The priest is in no doubt that the possession was real, and that everything that happened to LaToya and her children and everything that others witnessed was the work of demons, fallen angels, God's creatures turned against God and against man. And for all his reluctance, the same seems to be true of Captain Austin. He said, it shook me. Everything you do with this, it shook me. This was a situation so out of my normal habitat. You tell me, what do you think happened? Okay, let's go back to the beginning in Genesis. It says, there were giants in the earth on those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the sons of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. That's just one place in the Bible where it introduces the fallen angels, and it goes on and on. That's when God saw the wickedness in the world, and he decided he was going to destroy it with the flood. This is the Blue Letter Bible, and you can see, I really recommend this if you want to read these verses on your own later, but let me show you just a little bit here. If you click on the Tools button, it will tell you from Strong's what it means, what the word giant means. And here it is right here, Nephil. I can't pronounce it right, but that's the Nephilim. Like I said, I'm not an expert on this. Steve Quayle and L.A. Marzulli are. Tom Horn, they have done extensive research. I just thought I would point that out to you using the Blue Letter Bible. We're going to go back and forth here for a little minute, and for the sake of time, I'm going to pull out some verses, but I do recommend that you look at these and read the verses before and the verses after so you can get a clear picture of what's going on. Here in 2 Peter, he's telling, well, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. You know, he's trying to explain here that if he didn't spare the angels, he's not going to spare us. We all know the stories of the war in heaven where angels and Satan rebelled against God, and they were thrown down to the earth. And then you go into Genesis and you see what the verses that we just read, where they found the daughters of men and married some of them and created, and that turned into the Nephilim. Demons are disembodied spirits of the fallen angels. That has been proven. It says, the Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished. Okay, let's take a look a minute at Solomon. And I use Wikipedia because it's all put together in one place. I don't use Wikipedia only. I always research a little bit about what I find. I may not show it, but I do. Anyway, there is a lot of interesting fables and stories about Solomon, but here about the angels and magic. According to the rabbinical literature, on account of his modest request for wisdom only, Solomon was rewarded with riches and unprecedented glorious realm, which extended over the upper world inhabited by the angels, over the whole of the terrestrial globe with all of its inhabitants, including all the beasts, fowls, and reptiles, as well as the demons and spirits. His control over the demons, spirits, and animals augmented his splendor, the demons bringing him precious stones besides water from distant countries to irrigate his exotic plants. Okay, that was just a little bit of what I found, on Solomon. We all know the story of Solomon and how he built the temple, and that he had power over some of the demons. God gives power in some instances to perform good. He opens portals to perform his will. He allows this, but again, it's very dangerous. There are many instances in the New Testament of where Jesus cast demons out of someone, but this is the most interesting. And he was come out of the ship. Immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. He was always night and day in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus, he ran and worshipped him, and he cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. So, see, even the demons know Jesus. They know what he's there for. They asked Jesus in this instance to not torment them. And he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. So there were many demons inside this man. And you can go and read this. I'll just make it short. Jesus cast them out of the man, and they went into a herd of pigs nearby, and they ran violently down a steep cliff into the sea, and they were drowned. Now, the man, he cleaned up and worshiped Jesus, but when the herders of the pigs ran into town and told Jesus, or told the men that Jesus had what he had done, they came out to Jesus and asked him to leave because they were so afraid. So these demons, you know, they come with so much fear that they were afraid of Jesus because he had power over them. The most important portal to hell that I want to go over is in Revelation. There are several references to a portal in Revelation. One is where the angel came down from heaven with the key to the abyss, and he opened it, releasing the destroyer. But here's another one, and it says, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. This not only talks about a portal that is due to be opened just any time, but it also shows how God uses this to complete his cleansing. Now, when you go into the Blue Letter Bible, it does help you to show things. It says here, after the portal is open, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. Now, let's go into the tools here for a minute and look at the word brimstone. Here it is. When you look at it, this is the definition that it gives. When you click on the tools and you click on the word brimstone, it gives you the name and the definition, and I found this very interesting. Brimstone, divine incense, because burning brimstone was regarded as having power to purify and to ward off disease. What I found interesting about this is God used fire and brimstone to purify Sodom and Gomorrah and destroy it from their wicked ways, and he's going to use it again in Revelation to purify the world from its wicked ways. And everybody has to admit, no matter if what you believe, that our judgment is past due. Anyway, I found that very interesting. I want to move on for just a minute to the story of Balaam. You can read it in Numbers chapter 22, but he was a prophet of God, and or Balak was, and he was trying to curse Israel. Well, it's a very interesting story. He was commanded by God not to do that, and you can read the story about him and his donkey as he was on his journey to the king to curse Israel. Like I said, Numbers 22 gives the historical count of that, but Balaam, who is a false prophet, got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn, she turned off the road and into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord, standing in a narrow path between the two vineyards, so that the donkey he refused to go, he couldn't go around, so he refused to go. And the angel of the Lord ended up telling Balaam, why are you beating your donkey for what he can see, or she can see, and you cannot? Anyway, Balaam went on his journey, and he finally ended up telling Balak, the king, that the king of Moab, that he could not curse the people of Israel, but if he could entice them to worship other gods, God would curse him himself. So this is one site that has an explanation along with the scriptures on this. It's called enduringword.com. It's a commentary, and I found it very interesting, so I was going to read you part of this. The anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. Balaam had done his best to curse Israel, but was unsuccessful. Yet his love for money wouldn't let the matter end without pleasing the man who hired him, the king of Moab. In 2 Peter, he speaks of Balaam and his love of money, using him as an example of later false prophets. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey speaking with a man's voice restrained the madness of the prophet. Revelation also makes a connection between Balaam's unsuccessful attempt to curse Israel and this subsequent idolatry. When Jesus says, "But I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality." Essentially, after his failure to curse Israel, Balaam said to Balak, "I cannot curse these people, but you can get them to curse themselves through enticing them to rebel against their God." This is, I think it applies to today. How do you think Satan got the Israelites to turn to Baal, to turn to false gods, so that they would be cursed? It's very easy. You do what you're doing today with enticing the children and the youth and the country and the world to look towards satanic images, say like in the entertainment industry and the satanic games. You're opening portals that Satan is just happy as he can be about, and it seems simple, and everyone is blind and they cannot see it. One last thing, because I think it's important. It's important for you to realize what's happening. This is from the Christian Post. It says, "Did satanic performance or gay marriage lead Natalie Grant to leave the Grammys early?" I watched the video of Katy Perry's performance, but I'm not going to play any of it here. It was satanic. It was evil. She did invoke demons, and it's just crazy. She was dressed as a witch. This is a woman that was raised in the church. Her father was a minister. And this just totally amazes me. She ought to know the dangers of even pretending to do this, but she did not. And also there's another instance in the Bible where we know that there are portals. Satan tempted Jesus in the desert, and he offered Jesus this fame and fortune if he would just bow to him. And Jesus rebuked Satan with the word. I just can't stress that enough. I just can't. Anyway, let's go back to this. There was evidently a Christian artist named Natalie Grant who left the Grammys early because of this. And again, this was just absolutely horrendous. There's another picture. I hesitate to even show any of these because she was dressed mocking God. The whole song was mocking God. I mean, this is just, it's just nuts, and she should know better. She should know better. Anyway, we'll scroll down here. The gospel artist Natalie Grant left the Grammys early. She really wouldn't say anything bad. She just said that the artist kept her message positive, however, declaring, "I've never been more honored to sing about Jesus and for Jesus, and I've never been more sure of the path I've chosen." Something scared her. She said she wouldn't say anything bad, but that's what she would say. She's going to sing about Jesus and his word. Before Grant walked out, Katy Perry and Juicy J performed the song "Dark Horse" in a manner widely described as satanic. Perez Hilton praised the performers as fiery Satanists, adding that they hope KP's parents weren't too mad at that Satan-themed performance. I would be on my knees. We should probably be praying for her, all of us, because this is terrible. There was one tweet that said, or it's Catholic Vote, they asked the question, "Didn't you hear Satan attended this year's Grammy Awards?" I mean, this is ridiculous. Katy Perry's performance involved many images evocative of the occult, including beasts, fire, and witchcraft, opening as a witch cloaked in black. I mean, this is just, it's awful. And this is just one instance. Look at the satanic images that were with the Olympics in London, and the satanic images at all of the entertainment, like the halftime at some of the Super Bowls, and the games that your kids are playing. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. It's a site I found called BibleKnowledge.com. And here is an article titled Dangers of the Occult, and it says, with the advance of what is called the New Age movement, there are many Christians who are getting pulled into dangerous dark side activity. Many Christians have not read the Bible in its complete entirety, and they are not really aware of the strict warnings that God the Father has given about being involved in any type of occult activity. I couldn't agree with this more. One of the greatest stories in the Bible is told in the stories of Moses and how he pulled God's chosen people out of slavery from Egypt, and then the subsequent story of Joshua and Caleb, who were then called by God to lead his people from the wilderness into the promised land. Before they went into the promised land, though, they were given strict warnings and guidelines by God the Father as to what they could do and what they could not do. And one of those warnings was about not engaging in a lot of the pagan practices of the people who were already inhabiting parts of the promised land. Many of these people were evil, had horrible practices of sacrificing their own children to appease what they thought were gods. Some of these people were involved in heavy occult type activity, and God was very strict. Those warnings, as I've said over and over too, still apply to this day. The Bible does not change. Jesus said, my words were the same yesterday, today, and forever. Heaven and earth might pass away, but my words will never pass away. Okay, he's going to list some of the reasons here, the reasons God does not want us to engage with the occult. Number 1, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. People don't like to look at that today. They say, oh no, that's not true. My God is a loving God and he loves everybody. Everybody will go to heaven no matter. The fear of God has gone out of the church, out of the school, out of our daily lives. The Bible says that it is a job of the Holy Spirit to guide us into all truth and teach us all things. God wants to be the guide and teacher in your life. He doesn't want you to seek others for this type of divine guidance. And I'm sorry, but dabbling into the occult is doing just that. You're seeking another spirit. And it's very, very dangerous. The first 2 commandments are that we are to have no other gods or idols. The minute you go to a fortune teller or a psychic for any type of divine guidance, you are placing this person before God the Father, and you will thus risk incurring his wrath, along with possibly opening the door for demons to be able to come directly after you. I cannot stress that enough. I agree with this 100%. They get their ability to have partial knowledge about you and your present situation directly from demons. No human has a supernatural ability to know what is going to happen to you in the future or anything about you in your present condition if they have never met you before, and that is the gospel. That is the truth. And he goes on to talk about the dangers of that and the dangers of hypnotism. A demon can become attached to you during this. You're in a vulnerable moment, and I agree with this 100%. You can find this on www.BibleKnowledge.com, Dangers of the Occult. So I will scroll on down here. This is just amazing. I just don't know. We'll go on to the next page for just a second so you can see. Here's another of the Bible verses. There's 5 of them that gives us major warnings from the Lord. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or who practices witchcraft, a soothsayer, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or who conjures up spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up from the dead. All who do these things are an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord your God drives them out from before you. That one verse right there should be enough to let us know that that's it. But he does give some more in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and they all say the same thing. Give no regard to mediums, familiar spirits. Do not seek after them to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. So I don't know. This is just please be careful and do understand that we are in the last days. There are demonic portals being opened, and actually the population is helping them to open, and because they don't realize what they're doing. What they think is innocent is not, as God gives us clear warning in the Bible. And it's even warned in the New Testament, where with the apostles they say, test the spirits to see where they come from, to make sure that they're from God. So again, I urge you to be very careful. Okay, I'm going to leave you with the thoughts of those last Bible scriptures that we read that prove that you don't deal in the demonic. And we're going to do more posts on this realm of demonic spirits. I've discussed it with one of the other authors, and we want to delve into this so that you can see the dangers of what's going on. We just can't stress it enough that be very careful. I have personally experienced some of these things that were talked about in the article. I was never possessed. I don't want to give that idea, but I have witnessed things like they were talking about, where things flew across the room and slammed against a wall. And I just have witnessed it firsthand, and it's terrible. And like I said, you have to be very careful about delving into this, and again, be very careful about what your children are doing. Search out the scriptures for yourself. Be a Berean. Look into this. And until next time, stay prayed up, packed up, and ready to go.